Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Joe Jaramillo. I'm a senior attorney at Housing and Economic Rights Advocates. We are a nonprofit legal services organization based in Oakland, but serving consumers statewide. And today we are going to talk about easy tips for better credit, how to access and read your credit report, improve your credit score, and deal with different types of debt. And I want to emphasize that these are things that you could do for free. And you may need help to do it, and there are free services available, including Harrah's, my organization. But you don't need to pay a debt settlement company or a credit repair company to do these things, and that's super important. This is a collaboration with Sacramento County Public Law Library, and you can type your questions into the Q&A box as you listen to the presentation. Michael Sun from Harrah will read them to me, and then I can take a stab at answering them. It says they'll be answered at the end, but feel free to type them in now, and Michael, feel free to chime in and let me know when we have a question. I'm happy to just answer them as we go. Please note the presentation is informational purposes only, does not create an attorney-client relationship between the participants and the Sacramento County Public Law Library or Harrah. There is more information on additional resources available at the end of the presentation. So if you ask a question, make it generic. This is not the time, unfortunately, if you have a very specific question about your own personal situation that's detailed, if you could just kind of ask it generically, like how would someone go about doing this? That's the best way. If you had specific questions, you could reach out to Harrah directly for assistance, and we'll show you how to do that at the end. So I'd like to start with just the generic question. You may already know this, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, what is a credit report and what gets reported on your credit report? So a credit report is a document that lists all of your credit accounts, and it lists other information about you, and it tells the reader, which are generally potential creditors, people that might be extending credit to you. It tells them if you've been paying your bills on time and other information to see if they want to extend credit to you. So things that get reported are name, address, phone number, employer, credit cards, that's a credit account, loans like student loans, auto loans, mortgage, anything that's in collections. If you've missed a payment and it's been sent to collections, that will get reported. Sometimes those underlying accounts are not credit accounts, but there might be a utility bill, a cell phone bill. But if it goes into collections, that does get reported. Court judgments, like debt collection judgments or even evictions, could be reported. Things that are accessible in public records. Also inquiries, meaning if someone is looking at your credit report to see if they want to extend you credit, that'll get reported. And some reports will have arrests and conviction records. What does not get reported are things that are generally not credit, like checking accounts, saving card payments, utility bill payments like gas, electricity, cable, or phone. Rent payments do not get reported, and prepaid cards do not get reported. So it's kind of unfortunate because if you're making on-time payments and if you're keeping, a balance, you don't go overdrawn on your bank account, that should indicate that you are a responsible consumer. But unfortunately, that's not considered credit, and those things don't get reported. Generally, if you have missed payments, or if you stop paying on an account, that will stay on your credit report for 7 years. The one exception is when you file for bankruptcy. That is, you're trying to get your debts discharged or get into like a bankruptcy repayment plan. That will stay on for 10 years.
Thanks so much,
So,
Joe. And it looks like sorry to interrupt. We did just have a question come in. And is it actually possible to have a late credit card payment removed from a credit report?
we'll go over this a bit later, but the things that you can get removed from your credit report are things that are inaccurate. So if it was actually a late payment, it's going to be hard to remove. You can always ask the issuer, the furnisher of the information, the credit card company, if you know, you can ask for what's called a good faith removal of negative credit reporting. You can call them and say, hey, I've been a responsible customer. I made all my bills on time. There was just this 1 month when I couldn't make it due to some kind of extenuating circumstance. You could explain what that was. You might have lost your job. You might have had an extra expense you didn't anticipate. And sometimes they will, in good faith, remove it because they want to keep you as a customer. They don't have to, though, if it's accurate. If you actually were late on that month, and that's accurate, they don't have to remove it, but you can absolutely try to get it removed. If it's inaccurate, if you actually made the payment on time, or if they'd given you like an arrangement, an accommodation to say, we're going to let you, not miss this month's payment due to your circumstances, and that was given in advance, then you can ask for it to be removed, both from the credit card company and the credit reporting agency, and we'll show you how to do that later. And you would have a good argument that it should be removed because it's inaccurate. But if it's accurate, unfortunately, unless the credit card company voluntarily removes it, they're allowed to keep reporting it. Okay, so credit reports can impact your financial options, as I'm sure most of you already know. If you're going to get a loan or a credit card, the banks and other lenders are going to look at your credit report to decide if they want to give you the loan or credit card, and then also to determine what interest rate. The worse your credit, the higher the interest rate you'll get offered. Housing and rent can be affected. A landlord might use your credit report to decide if they will rent an apartment to you or rental housing. And that also applies to public housing. And then insurance companies may also use your credit report to determine whether to give you insurance coverage, and what rates you'll have to pay. And then in some very narrow cases, employers can also look at credit reports. And this is specified in the California Labor Code, but it's generally limited to things where you're dealing with sensitive financial information, or working for the government. And if they do check your credit report, they have to provide you with a copy of it. So bottom line, a good credit report can save you money and open up opportunities, whereas a bad credit report can cost you money and close out some of those opportunities. So the credit report itself is a list of information and accounts. It doesn't, in and of itself, come with the credit score, but there are major credit scoring companies that derive that score from your credit report. And usually you don't get the credit score automatically. That's something that you have to ask for and probably pay an additional fee generally. But just to give you a brief overview, there are two major scoring models, FICO and Vantage. Their models are proprietary, so we don't have access to know exactly what their formulas are, but they're very similar, and we know the major factors. One of the major factors, probably the biggest one, is the payment history. So the more on-time payments you make and are showing up on your accounts on the credit card, the better. Each on-time payment is going to help your score. So that, key takeaway, if at all possible, try to keep making those on-time payments. The amount owed also on each account is a big factor. So the credit scoring companies and potential creditors, if they see that you're using more than 30% of your available credit, to them, that sends up a red flag, that you might be struggling financially. And so that's not saying that if you need to use that credit that you shouldn't, but generally, if you want to keep your credit score, high, or improve it, try not to use more than 30% of your available credit. So if you have a credit card, that gives you, a credit line of $1,000, you try not to use $300 of that per month. So you could do the math on given whatever your credit limits are. And so that's kind of on a per account basis. Another factor is the length of your credit history. So you want to keep even your unused accounts, you want to keep them open, or try to use them, because, sometimes we start accumulating credit cards and then we have this old one and it's been sitting there and we're not using it, and we're thinking, why not just close that out because we're not using it? Or maybe we pay an annual fee and we don't want to pay that fee anymore. It might make sense, but just be aware that if you close your oldest credit card out, that's going to be removed from your credit history. And now the length of your credit history is going to go to the next oldest credit card. So you might be going from 10 years of credit history to only 5 years. And that's going to make your score go a bit down. So you might want to think twice before you close out your old credit card. Think about whether, is this my oldest credit card? Is this going to shorten the length of my credit history? Because then you have to realize it can make your score go down. The type of credit used also can affect your credit score. So, there's different types of credit. There's auto loans, there's student loans, personal loans, home loans, credit cards. If you have more variety, that improves your credit score. And also, if you open up a new credit account, that will increase your total available credit. So you might have two credit cards of $1,000 each. So now you have $2,000 available credit. If you open up another card and then you have $3,000 available credit, that helps your credit score. But the one thing to keep in mind is when you apply for credit, the potential credit card creditor will look at your credit report, and that's called a hard inquiry because you're applying for credit and they're checking your credit report. A couple of those in a short time period is not going to really affect your credit score that much. But let's say you applied for 4 credit cards, in the period of 2 months, that's going to make your score go down because potential creditors think that you're sort of desperate to get more credit. You might be struggling financially, even though that might not be the case. So you don't want to apply for a lot of separate credit cards in a short amount of time. You kind of want to space it out if you're going to try to open up more accounts. So, if you apply for a loan or credit and you're given like a denial, they have to give you a denial letter explaining why you were denied the credit. There might be codes on there explaining, the denial and your score. And sometimes those codes, we don't know what they mean. They're abbreviations, but you can find explanations of these codes at www.reasoncode.org to kind of give you a better sense. But it's always good to look out if you're denied an application. Find out what the reason is, because that might clue you in also on what you need to do to improve your credit and be able to access these kind of credit cards or loans.
Thanks, Joe. And a quick question about payment history. If a company like Experian says they report your rent payments to improve your credit score, will the report show it?
That's a good question. This is sort of a new emerging area where some of the credit bureaus are expanding, what they're the types um, of accounts or payments that they're going to show on your credit report. And so, I mean, I don't have specific experience with Experian saying that they're going to count rental payments towards good credit. But my inclination or my sense is that if that's what they're saying, then it should appear on your credit report, because otherwise, how would that, I would think that if it's going to improve your score or if it's going to affect your score, it has to be demonstrated in the credit report. So we're going to show you, if you don't know already, how to access your credit report for free. And so I would recommend, if that's specifically an issue for anybody, that they check the credit report. And if that's what Experian has said, look at Experian and see if it's showing up. And then you could contact them and ask, if it's not showing up or if it's not, making sense, to ask them to explain, you've said that this will count towards my credit, but it's not appearing on my credit report. Can you tell me, why that's the case and what can we do for you to fulfill your promise? And then if you have trouble with that or it's impacting you negatively, you can always contact a legal services organization like HERA for assistance with that. So the information that we're talking about, like payment history, gets translated into a credit score. And like I said, there's two different um, companies that really develop the score. One's FICO and one's Vantage. Their scores are similar, but they're on a different scale. I think one of them might go to 850, another might only go to 800. But basically, this is it's proprietary. So like I said, we don't have all the exact formula. We have a sense of the general categories that I just discussed. But they get translated into this credit scoring system that you could see. Where if you're in the 700s to 800s, that's really good, and you have a good chance of getting approved for credit and getting good interest rates. Whereas if you're below 700, the more you get below 700, kind of the worse chance you have of getting a credit that you want or getting a good interest rate. It's still pretty good, between 650 to 699. But when you start getting in the low 600s and below, it gets really tough. And that's a clue that you want to try to take steps to improve your credit, which is what we're going to talk about. So one of the steps is to get your credit reports. And I'm going to show you how to do that on a weekly basis for free. But first, I want to give you kind of just a sense and overview of what you're looking for when you look at an account, in a specific account. So this right here is an example of account information. It's also called a trade line. Each account is called a trade line. And I've highlighted some of the key aspects of this. It'll tell you, who the creditor is. This one says Littletown Bank. Probably won't give you the full account number, but it'll give you some of the numbers so you can try to identify that account. It'll tell you what the balance is and what the pay status is. This one says 30 days past due, so that's kind of a red flag that you really want to check this and make sure that's accurate, because if it's not, you can ask them to correct it. This says account type, so this is an automobile loan. Tells you when the last payment was made. And then you can see here that there is, usually it'll be longer than this. This is just sort of maybe a snapshot, or maybe this is a newer loan because it was opened in February 2013. So we only have a few months of this. Obviously, this is an old example because this is from 2013, but you can see starting at the right-hand side, it goes month by month. So you see March 5th, 2013, and then April, and then May, June, July, August. So from right to left, it's getting more recent. And so on the March line, you're going to see the balance, what the payments was scheduled, and how much was paid. If there's any amount past due, and it's zero, and then at the bottom it says okay. That okay is super important. That okay means the payment was made on time. It's not always going to say okay. It depends if it's Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion, the three major credit bureaus. It might be a green check mark, or it might just say, paid on time, or it might say okay. But you want to see for that month, are they accurately reporting whether it was paid on time or not? And then you can see as we go month by month, this person made on-time payments for 5 months, but then all of a sudden in August, they didn't make the payment, and they're 30 days behind. And so that's going to be a negative hit. And so it'll go 30, 60, 90, 120 days behind. And then it's at a certain point after that, that usually gets sent to collections. And those are the accounts you want to check, see if they're accurate or not. And also consider whether you want to try to get them back on track and not just slide into collections with a past due amount. Is there any new questions popping up, Michael?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. One of them talking about why do we receive so many pre-approval offers for credit in the mail? Are they scams?
Okay, so it's hard to tell if they're a scam or not without looking at the specific letter. Many of them can be legitimate, but yeah, you definitely want to watch out for scams. So credit card companies I talked about a hard inquiry where you're actually applying for credit, and the more hard inquiries you have in a short amount of time, that could negatively impact your credit score. But if you're getting a pre-approval letter, it might mean that credit card company did a soft approval. I'm not sorry, soft inquiry, not soft approval, soft inquiry. And a soft inquiry does not impact your credit score. It will show up on your credit report. It'll show that like Capital One or Chase or Bank of America did a soft inquiry on such and such date. That means that they're allowed to go in and check some information on your credit report to decide whether to offer you credit. And so if you got a pre-approval letter, they might have done a soft inquiry and they see that you're a responsible consumer in their eyes, and they want to offer you the credit card. And you're probably seeing more and more of these more recently because interest rates have gone up. And so when interest rates go up, the credit card companies make more money. And so they might start aggressively marketing. But that's not to say that the letters are legitimate. So you want to check it out. You can cross-reference it by going on the internet and like Googling the company and seeing if the address and the phone number match up with what's officially listed. If you're in doubt, you want to, you can contact a company like not a company, but a nonprofit legal services organization or a HUD certified credit counseling agency to have them look at it and tell you if it's legitimate. But if you call them and ask them about it, a couple of red flags: they should not be asking you for your social security number. They should not be asking you for any bank account information. So those are the kind of things that are red flags on the phone. It is, sometimes when you apply for credit, those are legitimate on a paper form, but you want to be very careful about that. So I guess the short answer is that it's hard to say without looking at the letter. It could be a scam, but it could be legitimate. Is there another question?
It looks like there might be a question about what to do if there's a potential error on the report, but I do know that that's a separate.
Right. So we'll talk about errors and what to do about it later in the program. But let me finish off on reading the account information or trade line. So some other things to look at. Sometimes it'll say the account has been charged off. And many people misinterpret that to mean, oh, I've been forgiven of the debt. It's discharged, it's canceled. That's not what it means, unfortunately. I wish it did, but what it really means is they're writing it off their books. They feel that because the consumer is not paid for several months, that it's an uncollectible account. And so they're usually going to charge it off for tax purposes and get a tax write-off on bad debt. And they'll probably send it to a debt collector company or a debt buyer. There are these companies that buy hundreds of accounts at a time, and then they try to collect on them. So just to be aware that if it says charged off, that doesn't mean you've been forgiven, but that does mean that it's something that it might be sent to a debt collector. And the other thing to note is you might see companies on your account that, hey, I don't have an account with them. Why is that showing up? It may be legitimate or it might not. Sometimes, like I said, the debts are sold or they're sent to collections. And so the original debt might have been a Bank of America account that you had, but now it's sent to ABC Debt Collector and you never had an account with them. But that ABC Debt Collector trade line should show the name of the original creditor, and then you can kind of match up. If it says ABC Debt Collection, but original creditor Bank of America, original account number, that can clue you in that, yes, I did have this account, and because I didn't pay, now it's in collections. Other times, like I said, it's sold to a debt buyer like Midland Credit Management or Portfolio Recovery Associates. That should also show the name of the original creditor so you can match that up. So just some things to be aware of. But when you're in doubt, we'll show you how to get your credit report, and then you could always contact a HUD certified credit counseling agency, which should not be charging you, or a legal services organization like HERA to review your credit report with you. But kind of the main takeaway on this is, remember the on-time payments are really good for your credit score. The past due payments, you want to be careful. You want to see if it's accurate. Was it really past due, or is it an error that you can ask to be corrected? So here's how you access your credit reports online or by mail free once per week. It used to be once per year, and that's why it's called annualcreditreport.com. But since the pandemic, they're offering it for free once per week, where you can get credit reports from all three major credit reporting bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, simply by completing information online at annualcreditreport.com. And it has to be annualcreditreport.com. It will say here, annualcreditreport.com exactly, the only source for your free credit reports authorized by federal law. This is a safe website, but it has to be this website. So if you don't, there's copycat websites out there, freecreditreport.com, free annual credit report. It has to be exactly annualcreditreport.com. And you go on there and it walks you through how to enter your information. It will ask you some questions because once you have your information entered, it can pull up some of your credit accounts and it will ask you which one of these credit accounts was yours, and it might say Wells Fargo, Midland Credit Union, Bank of America, and then only one of them is correct. And then it's doing this to verify that you are who you say you are. And if you answer the 2 or 3 questions right, it'll give you access to the credit report. And you kind of do it one by one. You start with one of them, like Experian, and then you move to the next one and then the other. Sometimes you may not be able to verify either because you forgot or potentially you were a victim of identity theft and an account was opened in your name, you didn't know about it. If that's the case, if you can't get verified to get your credit reports online, there is a form you can send by mail. And so this is a sort of a screenshot of that form. And they're asking for basically the same information on this form. You could print it out from the annual credit report website and then send it in and then get your credit reports that way. And just for folks who don't have social security numbers, if you just have a taxpayer ID number and ITIN, the only way you can get your reports is by sending it in by mail. You can't do that online. So I just encourage folks, take advantage of this. It's free once per week, and get your credit reports and review them. And we'll talk some more about things to look out for. So common credit reporting errors that you could ask to be corrected, as I'll talk about later. The name or the address or phone number or the employer listed is not yours. A lot of times it'll have a series of names. My name's Joe Jaramillo. Technically, my birth name is Joseph. So it might have like 4 different names: Joseph Jaramillo, Joseph E. Jaramillo, Joe Jaramillo, Joe E. Jaramillo. Those might have been all mine that have been used at different times. But if it says Johnny Jaramillo or Jessica Jaramillo, I know that's not mine. And just to be safe, I'm going to send a credit reporting dispute letter that we'll talk about later to have it corrected. More serious is when the account isn't yours. So you definitely, that might clue you in that you're a victim of identity theft. Again, check if it's a collection account or a debt buyer, because that might show an original creditor where you actually did have an account, and that might be legitimate. But when in doubt, you can send a letter called a debt validation letter asking for more information about the account. And we have a sample of how to do that later in the slideshow. Some other reasons why it might not be your account. Sometimes there's what's called a mixed file. So you might have another person with your same name, and somehow their account got put into your credit report. And so you can figure that out generally because there might be an address associated with that was never yours. And that might appear in the name and address section of the credit report, or you might have to send that company the debt validation letter and they send you back information and you see that the last known address they had for this person with your name is not an address that you've ever lived at. And you can ask for that to be corrected. And then, like I mentioned, there's identity theft, where someone else has opened up an account and used it without your authorization. And there are some extra steps to take in that situation that we're going to go over. Michael, is there a new question popping up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question about annual credit report, which is how often can you request your credit report for free?
Once per week. And that's because of the pandemic. And it looked like they were going to stop that, but no, they're keeping it going once per week. All right. Other credit reporting errors. So again, negative reporting should be removed 7 years after the negative event, which is generally the delinquency when you stopped paying. But just a couple of details on that. If you stopped paying, but then you brought your account current and did not fall back into delinquency, that account will still stay on your report, but the negative reporting of the missed or late payments that were 7 years old or more will be removed. Okay, so that's good for you, because if you're now making on-time payments, you want that on your report to give you a better credit score. If you stopped paying more than 7 years ago and you never brought it current, that whole account should be removed, and not show up. That's also good for you, because it's not going to look good that you haven't been paying for 7 or more years on an account. Generally, that account will be charged off and put in collections or sold to a debt buyer, but you want to make sure that's removed. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have an account from 10 years ago that shows you haven't paid in 10 years, and that's hurting your credit score. You have the right to have that removed because it's more than 7 years old. Just a little caveat, if the account was charged off or sent to collections, that 7 year time period, it doesn't start to run until 6 months after the date you stop paying. So in that instance, it's really a 7.5 year time period that it can stay on your account, and then it has to be removed. And a lot of credit reports these days, they're telling you like on negative, they'll separate out the negative accounts and they'll put them up front so you can review them. And it'll have like an estimated date when this should be removed, and it'll have that date. So you can cross-reference that to these, the 7 year, 7.5 year rule of thumb here, and see if they're calculating it right. And then if they're not, you could challenge that as well in a dispute letter. The collections accounts, those should also be removed. Not 7 years from when it went into collections. It's earlier than that. It starts earlier than that. It's 7 years after the delinquency on the original account. So just because it went into collections this year doesn't mean it's going to stay on until 2031 for 7 years. You have to look back on when you stopped paying and when it went delinquent with the original credit card, which might have been 7 years ago or more. And then, civil judgments will show up, and those can stay on for 7 years. And as I said before, bankruptcies, unfortunately, are going to stay on for 10 years. And that's kind of a big hit on your credit. But there could be benefits to that, right? Because you're wiping the slate clean, and you're not going to be subject to collections if you can work that out or get it completely discharged. Finally, another common credit reporting error that we see is that the account, it's legitimate, it's your account, but it doesn't accurately reflect the loan balance or the payment status. So if you made a payment in May 2024, but it says you were late, and you have proof you made that payment, you have your canceled check, showing an on-time payment to the credit card company, you could use that as evidence and send it in to get it corrected. Did we have another question on this?
No further questions, but yeah, just the question about I paid $1,000. My card note has a balance of 3,000. It's still on my credit report showing 3,000. So I believe that leads us to the next slide.
Okay, yeah, so that might be so a couple of things there. I mean, we're not going to give advice about your specific situation, but you could contact HERA, or credit counseling agency that's HUD certified for specific assistance. But generally, if you've made a payment and it's not being credited, there's two things you could do. If it's showing up on your credit report, you can do a credit reporting dispute. If you haven't, if it's also your credit card company's not crediting it, you could send a debt dispute letter to them, which we will go over later. But bottom line, yes, you contact them, you need to challenge it. You can send it in writing, as always best, keep a copy, and send a copy of proof like the canceled check showing that you paid it. or a bank statement showing that it was deducted from your account. So definitely want to challenge things like that. But for credit reporting errors, there's two big steps. You want to send two letters really, because you see it on your credit report, but the credit report company is not the one that put it there initially. It was the credit card company or the lender. They're called the furnisher of the information. They furnish the credit reporting agency with the information. So you need to send letters to both of them. First, you send a letter to the credit reporting agency explaining what you think is inaccurate. Um, it's best to send it by certified mail with return receipt requested. You could go to the post office and they'll help you with that. That's to have proof that they actually received it. So they can't get off the hook and say, oh, we never received this letter, so we didn't have an obligation. That's why we didn't correct it. You want to have proof that they received it. Don't send your originals because that's evidence. Like if you ever have to go to court, you need the originals. So just send copies. And in the letter, and we'll go over a sample letter in a minute, but you want to identify the specific information you're disputing. Explain the basis for the dispute. Why do you think the information's inaccurate? And include all supporting documentation to support that basis. And we'll show you a sample on the next slide. And once you do that, the credit reporting agencies are required to conduct a reasonable investigation and also forward all relevant information to the furnisher or the credit card company that supplied the inaccurate information within 5 days. And then the credit reporting agencies have about 30 days, usually have 30 days to respond to that, and they'll give you their decision. And you can keep going back and forth if they don't correct it, and you think that they're wrongfully refusing to correct. And again, the second step, before I go to the second step, it's always good as well is to have a copy of that account that's on the credit report. You can highlight it or circle it. Just that page in that particular account that highlights or circles what you think is inaccurate so they can pinpoint that on the report as well. Step 2, you're going to basically send the same letter, but you're going to send it to the furnisher, the company that sent the credit reporting agency the wrong information. It could be the credit card company, a lender, whoever provided the information to the credit reporting company. And it's basically the same letter. You're saying, hey, you reported this to TransUnion. You said that I had opened this account, but I didn't, or that I'm 30 days late, but I'm not. I made the payment. Here's a copy of the inaccurate credit reporting. You circle it, that what's inaccurate. Here's a copy of my check showing that I made the payment, and you should have credited it for me, and you shouldn't have been reporting it to the credit reporting company. And you send it. Basically, it could be the same letter, but you're just going to phrase it to the credit card company as opposed to the credit reporting agency. So you want to take those two steps, and that triggers a duty on them to investigate and to correct it if they find that it's inaccurate. Here's a sample letter to basically send a credit reporting dispute. It's a template letter, and I've sent this slide presentation to the Sac Law Library folks, and so they could make it available to you potentially if you ask for it, I think. And so you could have this, at your fingertips, or you could contact Kara if you're having trouble getting it. But yeah, this is basically, you're going to put your name, address, you're going to put the date, you're going to send it, you're going to address it to the credit reporting agency for the step 1. Step 2, you'll have a letter to the furnisher, and you're telling them that you're disputing, the following information in your file. You've circled the items that you dispute on the copy of your credit report. It doesn't have to be the whole report. You could just put the page that has that item. And then you're going to explain in the second paragraph, this item is inaccurate or incomplete because, and you're going to explain why. Because I actually made that payment May 2024, and it's saying that I didn't. I'm requesting the item be removed or corrected. And then you enclose, copies of anything else like documentation that you made the payment. And then you ask them to investigate as soon as possible. Keep a copy of this letter, and only send copies of your credit report and your payment information, you don't want to send the originals, like I said before. Okay, so I'm going to turn now to a very specific type of credit reporting dispute. It's identity theft. When somebody steals your identity to run up a debt in your name, there's a few things you need to do. It's very important, and to do it as soon as you find out. Step one, you can place a fraud alert with the credit reporting agencies. You just need to contact one of them. It could be by phone, you know, Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. Report that you're a victim of identity theft. Ask them to put a fraud alert on your credit file and confirm that the company that you call, whether it be TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax, will contact the other two credit reporting agencies, which they're supposed to do. And that fraud alert stays on for 90 days. And what that fraud alert does is if someone is trying to open an account in your name and the credit card company tries to get your credit report, that the credit card company will see that there's a fraud alert. And you should also be notified if someone's trying to access your credit report. And then you could figure out, you know, was it me applying for credit or have I not been applying for credit? And so I know that someone else is trying to, you know, steal my identity again. So that's very important. You could even go a step further and ask for a credit freeze, and that will block anybody from even trying to access your credit report. But keep in mind, if you do a freeze, it'll block you as well. So if you're trying to get credit, the freeze isn't going to work. A fraud alert is better, but you can consider how extreme of a step you want to take. And then step two, get your credit reports. And if you're a victim of identity theft, you get those for free. But as you know now, you're going to get them for free anyways, once a week. But you can get those and check them to see if you think you're a victim of identity theft on one account, there might be other accounts. You want to check that right away and make sure they didn't open up others. And then step three, super important. You want to create an identity theft report and send it to the credit reporting agencies and to the creditors that are reporting the fraudulent account information. So if someone opened up a Wells Fargo credit card in your name, it's not yours, you didn't authorize it, you want to create that report, and you do it by going to FTC identitytheft.gov. There's a live link here in the slide, but it's the Identity Theft Federal Trade Commission identity theft website, and it walks you through step by step, asking for the information about why do you think you're a victim of identity theft? What account was it? Like what company? How much was involved? Do you have any idea who did it? Doesn't matter if you did or not. Most times we don't know who stole our identity. But you want to create that report, and then you're going to sign it by typing your name and putting the date. And you're swearing under penalty of perjury that this is true and correct, that you were this happened to you and you're a victim of it. And then you could save it on your computer or print it out. And that right there is an identity theft report that you can send to the credit reporting agencies and the credit card company, and that triggers their duty to investigate. They have to investigate when they get that report with a letter from you explaining that you were the victim of identity theft. The other option, you know, some people might not have easy access to the internet, or they might not be able to work with the computer. You can get a police report is an alternative. That's a longer process. The identity theft report from the FTC is immediate. You just can do it in like 10 minutes. But if you can't do that, you can go to the police department and ask to make a police report. Some police departments let you do that online as well. They usually have to take the information and then they have to get it approved within the police department, assign it a case number, and then get it back to you. So there could be a delay of a week or two to get that. And so that's why the ID theft report from FTC, I think, is preferable, but you can try that and you can ask if they can expedite it. Then you could use that. Either one is the identity theft report that you want to send. You don't have to do both, just one of them, but either one's the identity theft report that you could send to the credit reporting agencies and the credit card company. You want to save copies of these letters, and you want to keep a log of the dates, like when you found out you were a victim of identity theft, when you sent in your ID theft report, you know, when they responded. And this is just a visual. It's super easy to do this if you can get online. You just press get started and it walks you all the way through, and then you're done. It creates this report that you could save and print out. It's also available in Spanish. So I really recommend doing this if you're ever a victim of identity theft. Is there any questions at this point?
No questions at this point.
Okay. So there are special rights for victims of domestic violence. If an abuser takes your car, won't let you into your home, hurting you financially in other ways, you have the right to seek a court order regarding the use, possession, and control of your property, and the payment of any liens or encumbrances that come due during that time period because you're being denied access. And the court can also make a finding that specific debts were incurred as a result of domestic violence and without your consent. And then you could use that also to talk to your credit card company or your creditors or mortgage lender, so that they can provide you some accommodations for not being able to make those payments. So just something to flag. This would, you're better off suited if you get the assistance of an attorney. HERA is available to try to assist with these, as are potentially other legal aid organizations. So just to summarize, we're going to get more into how to improve your credit score beyond correcting errors on your credit report. But here are, some general tips. Disputing the errors, paying your bills on time, keeping the amount of credit that you use low, less than 30% of your available credit, keeping your unused credit accounts open, like I mentioned before, diversifying your credit sources. Now, with medical debt, like some people go to the ER, they might not be insured or their insurance might not cover everything. Then they get hit with this massive bill a month later, like for thousands of dollars. You can get on a payment plan. You can request financial assistance. Most hospitals are nonprofit hospitals like Sutter or Kaiser, and they have to offer charity care to people that are eligible, that are below, I think it might be 450% of the federal poverty income level at this point. It used to be 350%. So always ask if you can get on a payment plan, get financial assistance, because they're obligated to offer that to you. If you have judgments or liens, develop a plan to take care of them. You can seek assistance from HERA or a credit counseling agency for advice on that. Again, there was the great question about, can I get a late payment deleted from my credit report? Again, they're not obligated to do that, but you can ask for that goodwill deletion if it was unusual, like you always make your payments on time, but there was this 1 month when you couldn't. You can ask them to do that, and a lot of times they will, because they want to keep your business. You can negotiate with a collection agency also not to report the collection account in exchange for making some payments. So these are things that you can negotiate. And then you can determine if you have old debt or debt in collections, should I pay that down because that'll benefit my credit? And that's something a credit counseling agency that's HUD certified or HERA can walk you through and help you figure out, what makes the most sense. And now it's kind of a segue into the credit building products that we want to talk about, like unsecured credit cards, secured credit cards, and credit building loans. These are things we're now going to talk about, that even if you have bad credit, these are things you can access to improve your credit. So if you don't know what a secured credit card is, it's a type of credit card where you actually, because you might have bad credit and you can't qualify for a normal credit card where they're going to extend you credit, you're going to actually put down your own money for a certain time period. Could be between $200 and $500. There might be some small setup fees. That money's yours and it stays in the bank or the credit union, and they issue you a secured credit card because the credit card's being secured by your money, and you're basically going to use that card to make payments and spend it like a credit card, except it's being drawn from your money for that certain time period. So it works like a normal credit card. And the way to build your credit is you want to use it every month. Use it on things you're normally going to pay for, like gas or a cell phone bill, a utility bill. try to keep your purchases under 30% of the credit line. So if it's a $500 credit line, you want to keep it under 30%. You don't want to use the whole $500, and then pay off that credit card balance each month. Maybe you can only afford to use it, to pay for gas, or to pay for one time for groceries. Just use it and within those limits and make your payment off every month. Then after the deposit time period for usually 6 to 12 months, after you've established that you haven't gone overdrawn, you've made your payments on time, you've paid your balances. If you've done that responsibly for the time period of the secured credit card, they will actually give you your money back that's left, the balance left in your account, and they'll issue you a real credit card where you're using their credit to make your purchases. And again, use that responsibly. Obviously, try to keep your purchases no more than 30% of your credit line, and to make your payments on time. And that's one way you can start to build your credit up again if you've fallen into bad credit, because you can get this secured credit card even if your credit score is low. Do we have any questions at this point?
No questions, except maybe like a request for comment. Might be a little bit outside the scope of the presentation because it's recent, but any thoughts on Attorney General Bonta championing the California Ninth Circuit decision where medical debt can no longer be reported?
Yeah, so I think that's awesome about medical debt. The move. I think the CFPB also is trying to issue a rule or policy guidance that medical debt no longer be reported on credit reports, because it's hurting a lot of people. And a lot of it is debt that that there were problems with because people were not offered financial assistance. So I think my comment is, yes, I'm all for it. Don't report medical debt on credit reports. And it looks like it is increasingly moving in that direction. So yeah, the other, we don't have a slide on it, but there is something else related to secured credit cards that's called a credit building loan. And it's a similar scenario, and some banks and many credit unions offer this. And it's basically where you're making monthly payments into an account that's yours, almost like you're depositing your own money in a bank account, but it's considered a credit account. It gets reported as credit payments, just like your payments on your secured credit card would get reported as payments. Even though it's really a savings account, it's called a credit building loan. You're depositing, say, $100 a month for 12 months, and the credit union or bank is reporting that to the credit reporting agencies as a credit payment. So each payment is building your credit, and at the end of the 12-month period, you've got $1,200 or whatever, might be a different dollar amount, and then that's your money, like it was savings. So that's just another way you can ask a bank or credit union if they have a credit building loan. And so that is another way to build your credit. And I just my own comment is that credit unions generally, I think, might be more favorable for people with bad credit scores because they're nonprofits and they're not trying to make a profit off of you, whereas banks are for profit. They both offer these kind of credit building products, but I encourage you to explore becoming a credit union member to check that out, because there might be more favorable terms. And just to time check, this is a 1 hour program. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, that's how we have it on the calendar.
Okay, so we're going to have to wrap this up. This slideshow, if you get a copy of it, it has some more slides about debt collection, but our top, and there is this letter to dispute, when you say that the debt's not yours, or if they're charging you for saying that you missed a payment, you can dispute it. And there's a debt dispute template letter in the slideshow. So if you get a copy of the slideshow, that's there. But I can't go over all of the other remaining things because of time and because this is focused on credit. But I just want to let you know that HERA provides an array of legal financial counseling services All you need to do is call this number 510-271-8443, leave a message with your name and phone number and a brief description of your problem, and someone should get back to you to see if we can help, or if it's something we can't help with, to refer you somewhere where you can get help. And there are more resources here at the law library. If you need legal research, the Sacramento County Public Law Library can help you find free legal research materials. And there's online materials, very excellent articles on how to deal with different legal issues if you're getting sued for debt collection, how to respond, when to respond. You see the web link there, www.saclaw.org. And Hera also has our information here. In addition to calling our number and leaving a message, you can email us at inquiries@heraca.org. There's our website as well for more information. And Michael, you're going to drop, if you haven't already, you're going to drop in the chat box the brief survey link, right? To give us feedback, let us know how we did. Please take our survey, 3 easy questions. And that should be in, it is in the chat box. And I think that's it. If there is time for any more questions, I'm here, but otherwise, we can conclude. So let me know if you have any more questions. I'll give you a few seconds. Just give you a few more seconds because we're at our time limit. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope this was helpful. Again, you can reach out to SAC Law Library or to Hera if you want a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, because it does have some live links that you can, if you have it on your computer, you could click. It also has some template letters that you could use to dispute credit reporting errors or to dispute charges on your credit card or failure, to credit you for payments. I guess with that, I'm going to close out. And thank you again for showing up. And there is an email in the chat box to email the Sacramento Law Library for slides at programs@saclaw.org. And again, Housing and Economic Rights Advocates, we're a nonprofit legal services organization. We're here to help consumers with their debt, credit, housing, and other consumer-related issues. So don't hesitate to reach out. That is all I have. Michael, anything else before we close out?
No, thanks, Joe. And thanks, everyone. Feel free to email any questions to the email and fill out the survey.